Oh, well, good evening, and thank you, Trevor, and thank you, Adrian, for that incredibly warm welcome. It is such a pleasure to be here in Belfast, and having had 4 seasons in a day in your wonderful city, the north wind has blown and the sun has shone. It is such an enormous pleasure. As Adrian mentioned, I was here last year at the Titanic Museum, a wonderful place to be, and now here I am on the waterfront, and I have to say I absolutely love your city. But I am also just delighted that there is such an extraordinary turnout tonight. And I know there's competition. As they say, you have a choice, and you are here. And I think that says an enormous amount about what is at stake at the moment, what matters. And as Trevor said so eloquently, you are at the sharp end of what's going on. And I do want to say a few words about that this evening. So this week, the CBI did something quite unusual, and so did the Trade Union Congress. So Francis O'Grady, General Secretary of the TUC, and I together signed a public letter published on Tuesday in the Times about the future of the Irish border. Now, I have to say, I have enormous respect for Francis, but we don't speak in unison that often. It is very rare. We are both, the TUC and the CBI, we are hugely committed to prosperity, to jobs, and the success of our country, but we tend to emphasize different things. But not this week. This week, because the issue is so human and so central to people's lives, we can and we do stand shoulder to shoulder. And what we said on Tuesday is this. With less than a year to go until the UK leaves the European Union, the government must not only declare that a hard Irish border will not be reinstated after Brexit, they must say how this will be achieved, because the uncertainty is becoming intolerable. It is time to replace warm words with wise decisions. Because 20 years on from the Good Friday Agreement, and we have celebrated that, we face a choice to reaffirm the principle of consent that underpins that agreement and its legacy of civil rights, prosperity and peace, or see a new division across the island of Ireland with all that would mean for the people here, for jobs, rights and livelihoods. And it is worth, I think, pausing for a moment to consider what is at stake. In the 20 years since the Good Friday Agreement and the border barriers were taken down, Northern Irish businesses, many of you in this room, have helped create over 160,000 jobs. Unemployment is at its lowest level on record. I confirmed that today. Product exports have risen at a rate of 6% a year, over 20 years, year on year. Does it make any sense at all to put this at risk? Companies here generate £70 billion a year in sales. And if you go north, south, east or west out of Belfast, you'll see the success everywhere. Take the £5 billion food and drink industry, the tech startups that make this region a global hub for cybersecurity and fintech, the booming tourist and film industries, and as Trevor has said, I come from the creative industries. I know how powerful you are. Your world-leading pharma firms, companies like Norbrook, who have just completed a £30 million investment programme and clocking up double-digit growth in the States. Or Devonish Nutrition, with sales from here to the US, Turkey, Mexico, and Africa. And of course, Bombardier, Table 21. Delighted to welcome you here this evening, this region's largest manufacturer, supporting thousands of jobs. Now, we know you rely on an integrated supply chain. You reach across multiple European borders, and you excel in just-in-time manufacturing. Now, companies like Bombardier can't afford border hold-ups. And in fact, the aerospace and defence industry, so important to Northern Ireland, has estimated that any new customs processes could cost the industry up to £2 billion a year. And that's just one industry. There's also what it means for the 30,000 people who cross that border each day to go to work. The many companies running all-island businesses, and for all of those for whom the border has become a relic, a true relic from the past. Now, Northern Ireland today is a place of great achievement and great promise. You see it all around you. Why risk throwing this away? A generation of progress so hard won. And that is the question we are putting to the government in Westminster. And we're saying this is the time to put politics and ideology aside and to end the prevarication. Now, we've been clear, and perhaps we've been clearer than some would like. The CBI we have said that a new customs union with the EU, would help to keep the border open and allow Northern Ireland to continue to prosper. In fact, I'd go further than that. Based on current evidence, it is the only way to keep the border fully open. This is not a dogmatic view, but a pragmatic one. And as Trevor and Adrian said this evening, we deal in evidence. Technology solutions may be ready one day, but not yet. A deal where the UK and the EU can collect each other's tariffs may one day be plausible and may work for business, but not now. And trade deals around the world may one day compensate for EU trade lost due to new European border barriers. But that day is not yet here, and we can prove that. So we are saying that both sides should explore a new customs union option, alongside, of course, and Trevor mentioned this, alongside ways to maintain convergence in goods regulation, that closeness to the single market that we know matters so much. That is the other essential ingredient in a frictionless border. Now, as we know, some have suggested instead having a customs border in the Irish Sea, but that just moves the problem and arguably makes it worse. Exports from Northern Ireland to Great Britain are 4 times greater than to the Republic. Now, we are making these arguments in Westminster, but we are also making them in the EU 27, because EU countries too have much to lose from a hard border in Ireland and much to gain if we get it right. Now, I know this, we know this, not just from our own international members, although they are very clear, but we also know it from our sister business organisations across Europe, BDI in Germany, MEDEV in France, FEB in Belgium, IBEC in the Republic, and I'm absolutely delighted that Danny McCoy is here with us this evening, such a powerful voice for Irish business, and we are delighted to work in partnership with him. And we are working in partnership across Europe to put jobs and prosperity ahead of ideology and politics. There's never been a more important time to do that. And the messages are clear. This is a time for open minds. It's a time for softening of red lines, a readiness to consider new models and new solutions on both sides. After all, Norway, Switzerland, Ukraine, Turkey, they all operate under different EU models, and they were all new once. And of course, we don't forget for a moment that Northern Ireland is not currently at the Brexit table as a participant. It is instead there as an item on the agenda and as a subject for discussion, and that is not how it should be. Right now, in Westminster, Dublin, Paris, Berlin, and Brussels, politicians are running the most important negotiations for Northern Ireland in a generation, yet it has no voice of its own. Now, I won't labour this point. You know these facts incredibly well. How 2 decades on from the Good Friday Agreement, Northern Ireland has now been 16 months without an executive. There's no programme for government. There's no industrial or economic strategy, no corporation tax cut that would have brought Northern Ireland in line with the Republic, and no directly elected voice of devolved government in the Brexit negotiations. And I do repeat, this is not how it should be. Yet, what is so remarkable is that Northern Irish firms have not thrown their hands up in despair, although at times I wouldn't have blamed you if you had. But instead, where leadership is lacking, business has taken the lead, and Northern Irish business has become the voice of the economy. You've been speaking up for jobs, prosperity, and living standards, and at the CBI, you have our total and unwavering support. And by working together, we can see that we do make progress. There's the transition deal. From the first day after the European referendum, businesses started to call the CBI's offices, London where I am, in Northern Ireland, all over the country, and they said to meet this challenge, we need time. So we did go to Westminster and we did go to Brussels, and we made the case for a status quo transition from the EU rather than a cliff edge drop. And the answer was resounding. The answer was no. That is not where we're heading. So we got the evidence from thousands of businesses across the UK. But I have to say, it was often the Northern Irish businesses that made the case so compelling, and we have used and told your stories. The bakeries that make bread each morning in the north for sale that same day in the south, the life science firms that manufacture medicines on one side and package them on the other. These are real firms, real people, real stories, and they have cut through. So now we can say that transition deal is within touching distance. I am optimistic about that. And there's a lesson in this. There's a real lesson. And it's about what business can achieve when we speak with one voice. And now we're doing it again on frictionless trade and the Irish border. And again, we have others with us, the TUC among them, and we are making progress. So much so that along the corridors and negotiating tables of Westminster, Berlin, Brussels, and Paris, the Brexit question has become the Northern Irish question. And that did not happen by accident. It's because Northern Irish voices and Northern Irish businesses have put it there. And we will make sure it stays there until it's fully resolved. And may I just take this opportunity to pay tribute and say the most enormous thank you to our fantastic CBI team here in Northern Ireland, led by Angela McGowan, our great chair, Trevor Lockhart. You have led this charge and you have galvanised us all behind you. And I, too, would like to say thank you to you here this evening. And finally, I just want to fix our eyes on the future beyond Brexit. There is so much to be done. And I'd like to pick one area in particular. And that is Northern Ireland's future as a place where people aspire to live and work. And in the 20 years since the Good Friday Agreement, Northern Ireland has gone from a place where more people leave than arrive to the opposite. It's a place where people want to come and stay. They've been welcomed, and the economy has grown so much so that it's outpaced the people available to do the work. And it's this pressure, of course, that accounts for those record employment figures. Now, it's a nice problem to have. It's a fantastic turning point, but the effects are being felt almost everywhere. From a shortage of engineers and pharmacists to the hospitality sector, to the waitresses, the waiters, the chefs, and the event managers who make evenings like tonight such a success. It's a challenge with two solutions. First, those of us in business, we do need to act. We need to look to those who are not engaged in Northern Ireland's working economy and say to them, please join us. There's work to be done. We can offer you the training, we can offer the skills, the opportunity. And so many companies are already doing just that. Firms like Northern Ireland Electricity Networks, British Telecom, offering apprenticeships to some of Northern Ireland's most disadvantaged young people and drawing that circle of prosperity ever wider. Yet there's a second part too to that answer, an opportunity for leadership from the government in Westminster, because outside the EU, for the first time in 40 years, the government will have the opportunity, and dare I say, the responsibility as well, to set an immigration policy that works for every part of the United Kingdom. And it needs to be right, because in recent days we've seen an abject lesson in how not to do it. Despite a lifetime's contribution to Britain, people have been told they do not belong here. This is completely wrong. Now, ministers have said they're sorry, and they are taking steps to put things right, and of course, this is welcome. But there are lessons we must learn for the future. This crisis, and it is, I think, a crisis, has been caused by a policy based on numbers and not on people, a policy fixated on a target of reducing net migration to under 100,000 a year. And for almost a decade, the message to civil servants has been find a way to say no. And mistakes like the inexcusable treatment of the Windrush generation became far too likely. It perhaps even became inevitable. Now this must change. And Northern Ireland, which has such a need for people and talent, has much at stake. Those 30,000 people who cross the border each day, their right to continue to do so must be confirmed. Those who come from across the whole of the EU to work for Northern Ireland startups, in the factories, the labs, the film studios, their rights must continue too. And above all, we need an agile immigration policy that sees individuals not as one more digit in a tally, but as people, as nurses, engineers, designers, chefs, as colleagues, spouses, friends, sons, and daughters. Now, this does not mean giving up control, but it does mean designing an immigration policy that is kind, a word that does seem to have gone missing from our political lexicon. Now, this should not be hard to resolve. It is in everyone's interest, but as with the border, we need to make the case. So thank you for your support. So let me conclude. Modern Northern Ireland stands as a testament to those who negotiated peace 20 years ago, and to everyone from all walks of life who have replaced division with reconciliation. And let us not now impose a new division just because our politicians were afraid to face hard reality. I do believe all of us in this room have cause to be optimistic, because business in Northern Ireland is speaking up around the negotiating tables of Brussels, Westminster, and across Europe. That voice is being heard. And I do believe that business voice can help to secure an open border. It can shape an immigration policy that works for people and prosperity. And business is what can ensure Northern Ireland remains a great place to live and work. And when Brexit is done, and one day it will be done, Northern Ireland will still be the only part of the UK to share a border with the EU. It will still be a place of resilience and determination, and I believe it will still be peaceful and prosperous because you have helped to make it so. So thank you for all you are doing. Thank you for your leadership, for speaking up, for making your case. We are proud to be by your side. Thank you.